If you are a leader, whether it's of an entire organization, a small team, or a team of one, this episode is one that you don't want to miss. Because let's be honest, no matter how good of a leader you are, and I'm sure you're pretty darn great, we can all be better, especially when it comes to how we think about and have conversations around things that maybe aren't super comfortable to us, maybe that we're a little afraid of, aka technology. You know, many people are in that boat. So today's guest is going to really just kind of wow you with her insights and knowledge on how we can become better leaders with ourselves and with those we lead. I am so excited that this episode with Jaime Diglio is going to roll out the red carpet for you on how you take yourself from the war room to the win room. So stay tuned. A new episode of Humanized Automation is coming right up. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Humanized Automation. I am your host, Dr. Jill Schiffelbein, and I am super excited to have this conversation today with our guest, Jaime Diglio. And she is the founder, CEO of The Win Room, has a killer TEDx talk and a book on Moneyball leadership. And of all those things, what's really cool about what she does is she has this really focused, proven process on getting you better ROI. And I'll let her explain what that means, especially when it contains anything about sales and moving the needle in business. So we're going to dive into that today. And also, of course, how it relates to AI, both my version and hers. So Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
I loved watching your TEDx talk on, getting out of the war room and into the win room. And something that really fascinated me about it is whenever you're trying to get results in business, there are so many people that try to do these slap on bandage approaches where it's, hey, here's this one little formula and it's going to change things. And sometimes they do move the needle, right? Like there is some movement there, but we have to first look inside before we can really improve outside. Tell us a little bit about how you got to those conclusions and what you do today.
Yeah, well, and thank you. Yeah, thanks for watching my TEDx. So what happened for me and how why I'm here even talking was that I was a very successful sales leader. And I looked very successful from the outside. And one day I was meeting with clients and I couldn't feel my legs. And so it was this big wake up call for me that, I found out, I didn't know what was wrong with me, but they said it was a stress response in my body. And so what I realized was that despite being very successful on the outside, on the inside, I was really struggling with who I was. How do I show up? What are all the things that I'm responsible for? I didn't have a way to manage my mindset, which was then impacting everything else that I was doing. And so I had to really take this step backwards and go, okay, what do I need to do to be able to manage my mindset more effectively so that I can have a more sustainable future? I got 2 little kids and I needed to, figure it out. And so that's when I started really exploring, understanding more about the mind, how it works, how we're wired to focus on the negative. And especially in today's society where everything is so fear-based, it's so easy to be stuck in what I call your war room, right? Is your war room is that space where you're thinking about, all the things you do wrong, all the things that everybody else is doing better, all your doubts, all that stuff. It's very easy to get stuck there. And so I had to learn how to shift out of the war room and into the win room, which is what, what I've focus on is what I need, right? It's what I'm clear and what my goals are, my direction, my strengths. So we want to be capitalizing more on our strengths than our weaknesses. And so it's a real reframe and shift in our minds, our headspace to then use that to be more intentional in how we do everything in our life.
And I think that intentionality is so incredibly important. And I find I shouldn't project on everyone in the world, but I have yet to meet a person who doesn't fall to the comparison trap at some point in time, right? Now, I know people who get out of it much faster than other people, but, we see, I used to say it in your TEDx talk too, we see people's highlight reels on social media, yet we allow that to impact us. I remember a comment on my recent attempt to summit Kilimanjaro. Over Christmas 2024, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I trained for it. I did everything. And at about 17,500 feet, my body completely and utterly shut down. 19,341 is the top of that. I blacked out 4 hours of my life. I'm grateful beyond gratitude that I made it actually back down to base camp and down off the mountain. And in my head, I had it in there one stupid comment. And it wasn't actually a stupid comment, right? This was this person's real life experience. And so it wasn't stupid, but it's the one comment that was stuck in my warrior room, which was, oh, you've done an Ironman. This will be much easier. I'm like, nope, because I could go get out and complete and finish an Ironman right now. No problem. Now, maybe I may not make it in the 17 hours because I haven't swam in like 5 years, but like I would get done with that race. It took me, I thought about that comment so much on that dang mountain, and it was one comment of hundreds of positive comments.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I know that I'm not like, I felt like a failure. And I think all leaders at some point, we have to look at our limits. We have to look at that. And then we see things that are, again, one comment out of hundreds and hundreds that just stick in your mind. And how are you working with people? These sales leaders who, by the time someone comes to you, they're already successful. They want to be more successful, right? Mm-hmm. They're looking to level up. What are some of those things that shift them out from that one singular comment, from that war to the win?
Right. Well, so we ground everything in data. And so when we think about it from like self data, what we're doing is, most people haven't done this work of understanding, like taking their war words. So that one comment that you stuck with you, like it kept repeating in your mind. And most people have a list of things that just continue to repeat in their mind. Like mine is that I'm not smart enough. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's like one of my war things, because then that goes way back. And so part of the process is identifying and naming what are those war words. Right. But then we're using that as data. Those are data points. And then what we're doing is we're building out our win words, which is what most people don't have. They haven't built out their win room. So they can't shift because they don't have a place to shift to. So we're building out the shift. The win room is the goals of where the direction you want to go in. What are the things that you're strong in? What's the data around what are the things that you're really good at? And when we think about that data, we're taking through that whole process of, getting feedback from people who worked with you, for example, right? Like, what are the things that people say about working with you? What are the wins that you've had? What are the accomplishments? We write that down. We identify it. We self-list it so that once you can see that, it's easier to remind yourself when your brain wants to go to that one person that, that one negative. Wait, here's all the data that shows the opposite of what you really are. Who are you really? So it's easy. So it makes it easier to say, nope, this is a direction. I'm not going to take the bait. My brain is wired to go to the worry, but we're going to anchor it in, no, this is the real data here. This is who I am. These are my accomplishments. These are the things. This is the direction I'm going in, and not shifting. So once you feel the shift, it's basically giving you data and tools to step back into the win room.
I really like that. And what helped for me in that moment on the mountain, and it's something that, many, many years, over a decade well of therapy has helped me really try to hone in on my win room. I look at it as, and I never called it a win room until now. So thank you. So my win room, one of the things that gets me in there is, I would call it lightly a control analysis. Mm-hmm. What is actually in my control? Was I in control of my body shutting down? No, I wasn't. Because if I was, it wouldn't have shut down. Mm-hmm. Period, end of story. But I think it's the same thing when you look at different things. Like, I know a lot of people, and I imagine you've coached them through it, through COVID, saw their sales numbers drop, their income and their revenue numbers decline. And, a lot of us beat ourselves up over that, when in reality, there were certain factors completely beyond our control. And I think it's, I'm curious your response to that and how you coach people to navigate through the control versus excuses, right? Like, is it really out of your control or is it not?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing is like when we focus on what we don't want, like you're never going to get what you want when you focus on what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the first thing, right? Because the brain doesn't really know. Like if you're thinking about what you're thinking about, like it doesn't know if that's what you want or you don't want. If it's what you don't want, but that's what you keep reiterating, you have to be able to visualize and mentally and speak and practice what you do want, what will happen. And so this is like just basic things that people don't even like, they don't think, they just continue to ruminate over here. But we are in control. Like we are in control. Like when I talk about the war room versus the win room, what war really stands for is where you work against results, right? Or work against revenue. So it's where you lose money because you're questioning, you're doubting, you're focusing all the stuff you don't want, which is time, energy, money, and resources. Like that's like all this time spent here. And when you think of it that way, it's like, absolutely, we don't want you here. We need you over here. And so when it comes to just like when I think a bigger, if we zoom out a little bit, is like this bigger problem is that you look around and you think everybody else is winning. So you're comparison trap, right? So you see everybody else because you're seeing they're only putting out there the thing. You don't see all the other stuff. Right. So you're like, we're then looking and going, well, why can't we do this? Why can't I do this? And everybody else is doing it. And you don't know. So it's like, it's this, it really can mess with your mind. That's why this framework, this tool is so powerful because it's like everything starts. The most important sales conversation is the one in our heads. That's the first one. It's the first one. And how are we talking to ourselves? What do we believe about ourselves? What do we think we can do versus what we can't do? And the thing about this is like, no, people don't really talk about this. Mm-mm. They don't really talk about this, but this is real. Like if you're human, and when I go and do these sessions, workshops and such, I will show lists from very successful leaders of their war room and their win room words. Mm-hmm. And show them that their most successful people out there have the same war room words of I'm not smart enough, I don't think I can do it, nobody, like all of the, all of the things that get in our way. But it's just this is a normal human behavior that we doubt ourselves. And so being able to squeeze out that doubt and creating new practices to shift yourself is the moneymaker, right? That's the movement. Doing it over and over again, the practice, you're building that win room muscle.
Yeah, I love the building the muscle. I use the skeletal and muscle analogy so much in what I do. So, Jaime, since I have you here about this, so one of the things that I manage a lot, and what a lot of people who are listening to this show, they want to think of humanized automation. How am I becoming more efficient in my business? How am I providing a better customer experience? And one of the ways that we can, and we know this, it's proven now, is to use artificial intelligence tools to leverage technology. However, people, and a lot of people listening too, are getting in their own way of that. They're in their own war room when it comes to their technology mindset. I tried it. It didn't work for me. I'm like, okay, well, tell me about your attempt, right? Was it tied to a KPI? Was it tied to a metric? Did you have a well-defined goal around it? What steps did you have in place? What data did you input it? And then people are like, well, I just tried to have it do this. I'm like, yeah, you didn't try it. That was playing, right? But so how, when people are innately afraid of something or feel insecure around something, which is natural, right? We feel afraid or insecure of things we don't fully understand. What are some of the conversations you can coach people from getting them out of their afraid to try something mindset or, hesitant to try something into the let's be curious, let's experiment, let's see what could be possible?
Well, I think it's working through what is it they want. So this is also, you have to anchor it in identifying what the individual wants and what they don't want. So if that person saying, I want to, grow my leadership capabilities, I want to have stronger executive presence. Okay, well then if you're doing this, you're practicing in this different technology and it doesn't work. It's like, well, what's the worst that would happen? Right. So like what's the worst if you're saying that you're a leader who tries new things, right? Or like you have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, then it's all about failing fast. How are you, right? So you are practicing your philosophy. So there's in the practice, so it's helping people to really rethink what is it that actually builds trust and it's relatability. When we think about in a world right now, it's like there's such a lack of trust.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that you can help someone to see that showing the human part of the practice, hey, I tried this and it didn't work, but then I tried it again and then I tried it again and I did it a different way and sort of like that's real. That's real. And so it's really helping them to reframe and think about what's that actual fear? What is the worst thing that could happen? And then once they've realized that, then it's like, okay, got it. And then we activate it and we practice it. Because that's the piece that most, they say, oh yeah, I want to do all this great stuff. They like say it, but they don't actually go and do it. So we want to like get them into the practice of doing it.
And I think that practice goes a lot with, it ties back to, what's your goal? And I know I like you call AI in your talk, but it's not AI, artificial intelligence, like I talk about. It's your aim and your intention. And I find that a lot of people, when they first start dabbling in using generative AI or their data, creating automations, they don't have a clear, in your terms, AI aim or intention.
Right.
How do you get people, like what I'm hearing you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is that, if I'm going to try to get people out of their war room and into their win room and considering and being curious about these new technologies and automations and things that are possible, it's really making sure it ties around the nexus of their identity and their goal in some way. And then my guess is then tying it to a completely different aim and intention for the business. Is that different? Is it related? How does that all work?
So I think I know that one of the challenges that why companies struggle when they say, okay, we want to go in this direction and we're all going to go in this direction, is that people aren't bought in because it's not grounded in them individually. So that's like the order in which we make it stick, right? If a company wants everybody bought into this vision, telling everybody to be bought into the vision, it never works. Because it's not grounded in the individual. So that's why we do everything the opposite way, where we start with the individual first, figure out what their goals are, what the direction they want to go in, what success is for them, and then show them the linkage of how their success criteria, their goals, then links to the business goals. So, okay, and then showing them that they have more in common. So the more that you can do the things individually that you really want to do, and like how that then applies to the business goals, that's how you get the stickiness. That's how you grow and get people to go in the direction that you want them to go to. But most companies do it the other way, and that's why they don't see success. They see chaos.
Yeah.
And that's why people
must implement this.
And a part of that is why, because you're like, I look at when we talk about that, is like companies are leaving money on the table, and because they're leaving money on the table because their people don't feel seen and heard and valued. And it's because nothing is grounded in the individual. It's like the individual people are walking around like aimless. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. They're just going like, they're just, I say it's like they're scrolling through their day like they're scrolling on social media.
No, that's a good analogy.
It's like the same type of thing. And so how do we ground people in well, what do you want for you? Right. And it's very rare that happens. We do everything from an outside in perspective versus inside out perspective, which inside out is the way to make it sticky, make it successful. And so that's, for me is sort of re-educating, leaders on like, how do you actually get this to work? It starts with the individual first.
It does. And I find in what I do, and it ties right into your perspectives on buy-in, right? And getting people bought in, letting people see the why, being attached to the reason, having some of their own agency, right? In the process, when it comes to, artificial intelligence tool adoption in business, there's so much fear, especially from people in lower levels of the organization, with all of the media fear that's put out there about people are going to be replaced. Look what machines can do. And I always tell people, like, there are certain things that, yes, that will be replaced, but then that replacement allows you to find ways where your humanness and abilities can shine even more. And I think leaders overall are doing a very, very poor job of challenging people at all levels of the organization to find ways to be more efficient, to find ways where they can spend time doing what makes them tick more, spend more time in the business doing things that makes them more fulfilled. But those conversations are not happening.
Well, I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, and a lot of the leaders don't really know. I mean, when you don't understand something, I mean, we were talking before about how one of the bigger challenges is, and I know this just because my years, at Gartner and working with so many companies, is that the technology leaders struggle with being able to talk to the business, and the business people, struggle with communicating with the technologists, and like there's so much friction there, invisible barriers, and there's such an opportunity, right? When we understand how people think and how people behave. And one of the biggest eye-opening things that when I'm working with people is explaining to them, hey, 75% of people don't think like you. Like, they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So that means that if without understanding how, like, yourself and how people think, chances are that 75% of your conversations are missing the mark. Right. And so if you're, and I talked about this in my book, but it's like, if people aren't listening, you're not leading. You think you're leading, but you're not leading. So it's an opportunity for leaders to talk about a learn it all mindset, and like, we're learning this together, and sort of, there's no way you could possibly know how to do this because these are new technologies. But what happens is, most times, is that our leaders, they avoid the things they don't understand. Mm-hmm. And so things that they don't understand, they don't really want to lean into. And so that's where you're seeing a lot of the resistance. They don't understand it. They don't feel like they are confident in it. And so they just avoid it.
And then I find so many leaders, and it's frustrating, and they're not the ones that typically last, but that are afraid of someone else being better at something than they are. And the best leaders surround themselves with people smarter than they are, because nobody knows everything. And it's so frustrating.
I know. I say it's like, the ego is the enemy, right? But that also is tied into what are the expectations and sort of the norms of the organization. So if you're in an organization that is tied to that, right, like, you're supposed to be a know-it-all leader versus a learn-it-all leader. So it's very difficult, even if you want to be a learn-it-all leader, if you're in a know-it-all environment, low risk tolerance, very, so it's just really, it's also about the culture of the organization. You could say you want that change, but if that's not like the norms, then it's never going to be accepted, regardless of what you say outwardly.
And it's so hard when there's that disconnect between what you want to be and what a system is telling you to be. And then you're fighting two battles. You're yet trying to learn, but yet you're still trying to play ball in the system. And it gets completely difficult. And I find, I put out to people that I'm consulting with, I'm like, hey, listen, if you needed to edit 10 photos on your phone, like with your family, and you don't know what you're going to do, who you're going to send it to, almost unilaterally, they're like, oh, my teenage nephew or kid or something like that. And case in point, they do it faster, and maybe not in the same taste, but sometimes better, but different elements of it are good and useful. And I said, why aren't you applying that with all of your employees? Anyone who's interested in playing or tinkering or exploring a sandbox, who can come up with a good idea, what is the harm in letting them do that? As long as you set the expectation is, this is exploration. What you find may or may not be used, but you have the ability to help inform potential company policy or processes and give them that time to play. What do you find are some of the fears that leaders have from that playtime?
It's just not, I mean, I say this over and over again, is that leaders or people that are in leadership positions today are like, they're more, majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them are very much around do what I say. and this is the process. It's more like management, and they're outdated. These are outdated practices, but it's not the leader's fault really, because it's what they've been taught, right? Like, I'm the leader, I'm the person that knows it all. And it's funny, when I used to like work with organizations, that's how I would very much decide which ones I was going to pursue from a sales perspective, like clients or prospects. I would look at if I had two leaders, and one is in like a learn it all environment, like never, not expected to know everything, but like to go find the right, like your success is in finding the key people in your organization or outside of your organization to get you to the answer faster, versus you're a leader who's basically supposed to know it all. And it used to be that was the thing, right? You're the leader, you're in charge, you know everything. Well, I mean, the last 20, 30 years, like, that's completely changed. You can't possibly know it all. Technology is moving so fast. So you pretend like sitting up in your, your hierarchy and like feeling like you have to kind of manage everybody down is a very outdated way of thinking about leadership. Leadership is, like you said, right? I mean, it is about how do you empower and get the most out of your people.
That's, gosh, I'm like writing down a note over here because it brainstormed a name of a session that I could be offering to executives that are in this mindset now, and just trying, because I think to me, an effective leader is more of that learn side, right? To me, an effective leader knows where to go or can find out where to go, can ascertain the resources, can find a solution. And for me, I talk about a lot the principle of equifinality, which means there's many paths to a different end, right? You are not a singular path. There are so many other ways and paths to get to that end. And as long as that is reached by a deadline in an ethical way, in a legal way, in whatever other cultural parameters you have in your organization, who cares? If you're a leader that can make that happen, to me, that's inspiring.
Absolutely. And I think that like the younger, earlier, generation of people do see that as well. To me, a leader is someone who can bring out the best in others, right? How do you help the people that are around you? How do you help them see their strengths? How do you help them capitalize on that and help them push them and get them to become more than they ever thought possible, right? That's real true leadership. But what we see is more like a dictatorship in a lot of these organizations. And it's interesting because I was just on a call this morning talking with a company. And I see this more and more of these companies, they're like bringing in new leaders from other companies to come and kind of try to make it more of a learn it all, like fail fast. But they're stepping into these organizations that have been taught, people throughout up and down the chain have been taught, you do not make moves unless it's approved by the leader. But those leaders have been removed, and the new leaders are coming in and saying, go figure it out. Go co-design it with your technology and your business leader. We want to empower you. And the gap is that you've got all these people who now you want them to just go and run with it, but they've been trained over the years to follow the process and not do anything without approval. So it's very different, that's a different muscle again to move, right? If you've been taught and trained for 10 years, you're in a company, like you do not make any decisions unless I say, it's okay. And now you have a new leader who comes in and is like, I don't want you to keep coming back to me. I want you to be empowered to go make your own decisions.
It's a completely different framework. It's your old war room to your new win room, right? You got to shift that back and forth.
Right. And like it's where it's like building that muscle. So that's like, it's like just telling someone, okay, now I want you to just be empowered to go do that. Even if maybe they were originally that kind of person, they've been trained to do it a different way. So it's like I think of it as like, you work with companies long enough. It's like we're going to centralize everything, right? I'm sure you've seen this with companies. We're going to centralize everything. We're going to bring it all together, right? And then a year or two later, and a leader comes in. We're decentralizing everything. We're giving everybody their own ownership, right? So it's like the same type of thing. And like now, like people are like, oh, wait, I've been taught to do it this way. And so this is where what the power and like, your investments are, your people are your assets. So how do we ground people and help giving them the tools in order to ground themselves so they can be the most effective? in all of their interactions, right? How are we helping them to achieve their goals tied to the business goals? But it really, like, a training on, how to align to business goals is not going to do it.
Right.
We need to understand what are the current war room, what's the war room, what's the fear, what's the thing that invisible barriers that are holding that person back. When we deal with that, that's when we get the person to be able to, they can self adjust. Mm-hmm. Got it. I don't want to be going over here right anymore. This is my zone. This is the direction I'm going. This is what I said I want. This is what, this is where the money is, right? Or the momentum. So it's just helping people to like drop. I think of it as like, we're all carrying so much, too much, and taking people through the process of how do you remove that 80%, that comparison, all the head trash, the person that told you, well, you did an Ironman, this is easy, right? Yeah. All that stuff that like it's holding you down, weighing you down, that 80% that you just don't need. And then honing in on that 20. So the 20 is every person has a 20%. Like that's their money ball. That's their winning formula. I have my little money ball here. It's a good year. Money ball, right?
I love it.
So like that's your 20. And like your 20% is like it's the direction you're going in, it's the strengths that you have, it's everything that you're committing for yourself. And once you have that, you have more clarity, and then you can make decisions in every interaction and how to move it continuously that way. So when I'm working with leaders, I'm in helping them to really, it's about what's the legacy, right? What's the legacy they want to leave and lead? What do they want to be known for? What do they want to do? And how do we help them to step into that? And so it really all just comes back to, people feel very lost right now.
Yeah, in so many ways.
So many ways, but a lot of it is just here.
It's here. And as tempted as I am, sorry guys, sorry in advance, as tempted as I am to pitch many puns based on the baseball analogy, I'm going to swing this conversation. Okay, I had to let out another way because I love baseball and I love puns. But one of the things that we've been talking about as we start to wind down the show, and I'm so excited for leaders to listen into this for so many reasons, but I think it's the honest conversations that people will have with themselves as a result of listening to your advice, Jaime, that I think are going to change a lot of people. And one of the things that has been that trend is that, the learning organization versus the know-it-all organization. And I love when like I'm on stage, right? And there will inevitably be someone who will stand up and be like, well, have you heard of X tool? And I'll be like, no, I haven't. Well, you're the AI expert up here. I said, well, no, but can you tell me, what programming is this tool built on? And then they're just kind of like dead silent, right? Like trying to prove that you don't know everything. I'm like, listen, if you can tell me the programming that it's built on and the process that it takes to gather data, I can probably speak educatedly about how this tool is being used. Mm-hmm. However, no, I don't know every tool out on the market because hundreds of new ones are introduced every single day. But to that end, one of my favorite parts, selfishly, of this show is getting to ask my guests, what's a cool tool that you are using in your business that's giving you an advantage?
Oh, yeah. So I love, there's a lot of I play around with a lot of different tools. But one of them that I love is Notebook LM, if you're familiar with that. And what I like about it also, I like about it because it has that podcast feel. Like, so if you could put in a website and then it would just basically, in a 5-10 minute podcast, tell you about the company, get you up to speed really quick. So if I'm going to be getting on a call with a customer and I want to understand their business in a simplified way, like I would use that tool ahead of time. So it's like, how are we using the technology to help us get better, right? How do we get it to work with us? To make us better and just amplify our conversations.
And I think how I've used Notebook LM, because this is a relatively newer tool compared to many others, is think of it as so many people will complain about, oh, well, ChatGPT doesn't have all the accurate information, or it's pulling from so many sources, it's not going to be specific enough for me. Like with Notebook LM, you put the sources in and you tell it to give you a summary of the sources that you want. And I think it's so good. And I love your use of it Like, I should start doing that before my podcast now. You guys give me all these links. I should just do that.
Right.
But, instead I spend time, which was actually very well spent, watching amazing things like your TEDx talk on getting from the war room to the win room, and reading more about your book on Moneyball leadership and all of those things. And Jaime, I think we could probably talk another hour about where leaders succeed and fail in conversations with themselves and with those that they lead. But alas, every good thing must come to an end, at least temporary, because I have a feeling this won't be the last time we talk. But yeah. I want to encourage people, definitely go check out that TEDx talk, check out the book, follow her on all social. We'll link all these things in the show notes, of course, everybody. But Jaime, is there any kind of last thought you want to leave with the listeners today as they're thinking, how can I be a better leader? And especially with things that maybe I'm a little afraid of or don't know much about.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is I say is success is a choice, right? And, it's about really being, and I talk about this in the book, but really being self-aware and being aware of where you're at today and, taking accountability for that. And then what are the steps you want to take to get to where you want to go realistically? As a way to sort of show yourself really grounding yourself in who you are. And I think so many leaders struggle because they're trying to be everything that they're not and not who they are. So the more that we can step you into who you are, into your win room and giving you clarity in who you are, the more effective you could be in everything you do, right? That's where you really maximize that, what I talk about, the new ROI, return on interactions. How do you make money in every conversation? How do you build your brand in every conversation? So it's all about being who you are, not trying to pretend to be all that 80% that you're not.
I love it. Jaime, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights and experiences on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and everyone, so let me talk about now something I just learned and picked up on the spot here, my personal ROI, return on interaction. If I am interacting with you as you are listening to this show, you know what I'm going to toss out that I could use? I could use your input, your experiences, leave some comments, leave some reviews, contact me personally, slide into my DMs on social, whatever it is, because I want to know what conversations you want more of as it pertains to this idea of humanizing automation, whether it's having the leadership discussions with ourselves and our teams that we really need to have, or more tactical, technical tools. I want your ideas and your thoughts. So be sure to reach out. And of course, stay tuned because another episode of Humanize Automation will be dropping soon.